order to present us something very good, very smart, and very teachable. Of course, this would be impossible without our partners. Our beer partner is Barba. You can take, we have a full fridge with beer. You can take as many beer as you want. Okay, sorry. Our accommodation partner that hosted our speaker tonight is Marvi. Our dessert partner, we will eat tonight these great desserts from the Biberon. Of course, Split Test City is streaming this meeting, and in order to have accommodation from your home, and you can hear a speech from our guests. Of course, our Uber partner, you can use our promo code TinelMeetup02 and get 25% of discount for ride home. Next month, not this time, we will host Marco Pivetta, as known as a previous. He works on a doctrine project, and now I will represent Charlie Owen. She's a front-end developer. She's working in Berlin, but she was born in the UK. Her expertise is front-end processes and architecture, accessibility, and making the world of scientific publishing a better place. So, grab a beer and enjoy, and please welcome Charlie Owen.
You just give me 1 minute to connect to this? So
yes.
Oh, that was 5 seconds. Okay, I'm way faster than I thought I was. Come on, move a bit, move.
I will.
Come. I'm in the zone now. I'm excited. Come on.
Bring the chart?
Yeah, let's take it in. It's all good.
You got present?
Pretend. I'm a professional, bro.
Okay.
Professional. Mildly professional. Hello. Hello there. I'm Charlie. Hi. Hi to whoever said hi. One person. I'm Charlie Owen, as you may have heard. And it's absolutely wonderful to be here in lovely Split. I've spent the day exploring the city, and I hope to do some more soon. I'm here to talk a little bit about empathy and development and kindness in design. So, first of all, let's just talk a little bit about me, because it's all about me, this whole thing. It's me up here, this one. This is how I normally work and dress day to day. I've actually been in and out of the web industry quite a few times. I think I get bored quite easily. But I was actually around right at the start. So I remember things like Lynx and Netscape 4.7. I'm somebody who used the font tag in anger. I can see a few confused faces already. That makes me feel so fucking old. It's unbelievable. I've been a graphic designer, I've been a teacher, I've been a systems admin, VLE admin. I've been to university twice and dropped out once. So ask me anything about paleontology or IT systems design. Dinosaurs and computers go together amazingly. Jurassic Park has taught us that. And as you might be able to tell from my accents and from the introduction, I am actually British. But please don't worry, because I'm one of those British people who actually likes Europe. And that is why I live in beautiful Berlin. I've lived there for a couple of years now. And it's somewhere that really fits with me, because it's a place of 4-star Michelin food, really top quality gourmet things. It's a place of privacy and restraint. People really keep to themselves in a very German manner. And people are quiet and respectful. And again, very German. And I love that, and that really makes it work for me. And there in Berlin, I work for Springer Nature. I'm the lead front-end developer for our new Berlin department. And you may not have heard of Springer Nature, but it is actually the largest scientific publisher on the planet. It produces things like Biomed Central, Scientific American, and Nature. You know, when you hear the news reports, when people say, as reported in Nature today, that's us. It's the most cited scientific journal on the planet, and it helps scientists get their work seen by the community. And now, I did a Google for scientists, and it brought back these, and I think they're all real scientists. I don't particularly know, but Google says they are, so I trust it. But I'm not here to talk about science. I'm actually here to talk, just a quick chat, about the history of the web. The single biggest invention in recent human history. So I'm pretty sure we can cover that in 45 minutes. Yeah, we're all good with that? Cool. And credit to Jeremy Keith here, because I completely stole these slides off him. I just want to talk about how incredible the web is. And it's incredible because it's dumb. It's stupid. And it's built from very, very, very stupid components. And I just want to give you a really simplified history about it. Just nice and simple. You know, we're going to gloss over some of the details, just simple. Because to me, it started with telegraphs. Does everyone know what the telegraph is? You know, the beep, 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 beep kind of thing? You know, sends the messages down the wire. This stuff was amazing. Before the telegraph came out, it took days to send a message to the next city. It took weeks to send one across the country, and it probably took months to send one to the other side of the planet. That's incredible kind of times. And when the telegraph came out, that changed to seconds. How amazing is that? That's wonderful. From this one simple technology, just wires laid along, and we send beep, 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 beep messages down there. The internet of the old age, definitely. And then again, in this very simplified version of history, telegraphs allowed the invention of the telephone. Yeah, we could say they used the same wires, they used the same principles, they sent signals down there, but instead of sending beep, 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 beeps, we sent voices, and people could talk at each other and argue with each other for the first time. Very early and primitive Twitter. And then the invention of telephones allowed the distributed computer networks. You know, computers were coming up at the same time. Actually, I don't know if anybody knows what this is. Anyone seen one of these before? You've never seen the movie War Games? Come on, 1984 classic. This one, that's an acoustic coupler. That was a very early version of a modem. You know, you took the landline telephone, you placed it on there, hooked it up to the computer, and the computer screamed down the telephone line at another computer, and that one screamed back at it, making strange noises, and they had a conversation. And then we standardized. We developed network protocols because we realized those networks wanted to talk to each other, so they did things in a common way. We produced things like TCP/IP, which incidentally gave us one of the most beautiful quotes ever, Postel's law, which is to be conservative in what you do, but be liberal in what you accept from others. We'll see some more of that later. That is that's applicable to every bit of design and development. And then those networks that we talked about, they talked more, they interconnected networks together, the internet. That's kind of a big deal. Yeah, we remember the internet. I say that like it's gone away somewhere. It is actually still here. I've heard about that, yes. And then we built these common communication protocols on top of the internet, on top of TCP/IP. Again, really simple, really dumb things that allowed us to send emails and do telnets, to FTP, and of course to use HTTP. And then we developed URIs to identify things, common naming conventions, just a very simple idea. No, we've now got, you can have an email address, what the fuck is going on at whitehouse.gov. Why are you leaving Europe at number10.gov.uk, all kinds of different things. And then, finally, HTML, layered on top of that. We had all these layers of things. Vague, but exciting, as Tim Berners-Lee's boss said when he proposed the idea. Completely underestimating one of the greatest inventions on the planet. The building block of everything that we do. But the web is strong. And we have to stop and remember that, I think. Sometimes just remember how incredible it is. And it's strong because of this simplicity. Because of those dumb technologies put together. Especially HTML. It's a simple, declarative language. And maybe you're not too sure what declarative means? Well, it's unlike any other programming language, if you can even call it that. It's suggestive. It's flirty. Yeah? It comes up to the browser, HTML comes up to the browser and goes, hey, maybe I could send you a bit of code, And the browser goes, oh yeah, maybe I could present that in a certain way. And there's a little bit of flirting going on, and eventually a web page appears on there, and it's all wonderful. But this flirtiness, this robustness, makes it incredibly robust. Have I been standing in front of the screen all this time? Right? You can pull a page apart as it's running, going through there and pulling out sections of the DOM, and the web page is still going. There's nothing else like this. It's like the Terminator, or the Energizer Bunny, or something like that. It won't stop. And you can see that even after removing 90% of a web page, the button that lets it go to the checkout still works. That's incredible! Can you imagine doing that with any other computer language? This robustness, this strength in the face of adversity is why the web dominates. Strict languages, things that have rules and regulations would have broken 100%. They were fragile, or they would have fainted and fallen over in a drama. Not the web. And similarly, one of the reasons why the web has been so successful is because it has no restrictions. Anyone has been able to build a browser. Anyone can get a browser for any operating system or any machine. There's no licensing restrictions. Again, isn't that incredible? Isn't that wonderful? And when the web first came about, anybody could publish absolute shit on there. They could do whatever they wanted to, and it was brilliant because people just had these mad thoughts and transcribed them into the HTML. People declared love for their favorite people and objects. And even famous authors, had their weird little presences on there in the 90s. In fact, somebody was just telling me about how they filmed some of Game of Thrones around here. That blew my mind, that did. The early web was absolutely bizarre and amazing. And it was a bonkers place. But good times are nearly always followed by the bad times. And what used to be free and weird slowly became balkanized and locked in and commercialized. I don't know if anybody can remember this stuff. Probably not, given that some of you were pulling faces at the font tag thing earlier. But at one point, the web got split between two browsers. Netscape 4.7 and Internet Explorer, I don't give a shit. And devs had to build two versions of their websites, effectively, just in order to accommodate these two browsers. Things had split so much. There was no web standards. There was no set ways of doing things. Users had to pick loyalty. They had to declare loyalty to one browser and use it. That was bizarre. And rather dramatically, we call that time the browser wars. It sounds like something Ben Kenobi would talk about to a young Luke Skywalker. Overly dramatic. That's the tendency of our industry, believe me. So things slowly froze. Browser development froze out completely, and all the innovation stopped. And we had a seriously crappy time for years. And a lot of people just left the industry at that point. You know, that's one of the times when I first bounced out of it. But then history restarted. And it came from a really bizarre direction. Because the first iPhone appeared. And it was this, well, it wasn't the first smartphone, certainly, but it was certainly the first popular smartphone. And it was this lesson in diversity that we'd never had before. Our sites up until then had assumed, well, you're using one of two browsers maybe. You're in the Netscape camp, you're in the Internet Explorer camp. And suddenly these sites couldn't cope with this new diversity that came about because a new device was there. Think how much of a game changer this was for people. Suddenly you'd only been using a mouse and a cursor. Now suddenly you had to think about this completely new browser that was in a different format, with a different interface. People had never dealt with touch before. So we had to learn responsive web design. Ethan Marcotte's fantastic idea that a site should adapt to whatever device it is on. And the reason we did that was because we didn't want to exclude people. Whether that was from a moral point of view or from a purely commercial point of view, we didn't want to lose out and not have our sites work on this new device. And it's a time that gave us incredibly robust websites as a result, because they had to cope with this variety of things. This is a time when sites had a distinct separation of concerns. You've all seen this? You'll know about this kind of thing. You put the most durable and reliable things at the bottom. You know, taking the weight, these are the strongest things. And then you put the next most fragile thing on top, and then the next most fragile. So, so it's built in a proper way. You wouldn't try to build a skyscraper by putting all the glass at the bottom. In the same way you build this, you put the solid things there. And I'm talking about the iPhone here, and I'm not an Apple lover by any stretch of the imagination. But it was a gift to the whole industry. Because diversity was understood then. People had this whole hippy-dippy kind of like love and embrace, and they wanted to help each other. It was incredible. It was the web summer of love, for sure. With slightly less LSD. But are we starting to see that whole cycle of the dark times kicking in again? We've had a good period up till now, but things are happening, maybe in different ways, different aspects, but with the same result, that we're suddenly choosing to exclude people. We've got to the point where we have websites that require 3 megabytes on average to download. And these are basic information sites. I'm not talking about YouTube here or something fancy, just basic sites. Whatever you might say. 3 megabytes, what's that? But we know this. We know that 53% of people leave a website if it takes more than 3 seconds to download. Okay? Yet, most sites, most of these 3 megabyte sites, take 12 seconds to load on 3G connections. That's like, what the fuck? How are we doing this to ourselves? It's like just constantly shooting ourselves in the foot for no reason. And you might say, oh well, that's just on mobiles, you know, that's not a real thing. Well, guess what? You know, the average phone is what most people are on in the developing market. What most people in this room use day to day. They're using things like this. And in fact, according to, oh my goodness, sorry. They're actually using this literal phone. Actually, not literal, not that there'd be no space for 7 billion people around that phone. But this model of phone, the Moto G4, is the most average phone on the planet right now. It's no coincidence that this is the actual phone I deliberately use every day, just to keep things real. But carrying on with things, it's not just performance we're having a weird-ass time with. Accessibility is still an unknown to most people, despite the fact that it needs to be a core requirement of every front-end developer's job. This is a core skill, no matter what you do. And we've got to the point where JavaScript has become the default delivery mechanism. To deliver HTML to a page, we're putting it through JavaScript and then rendering HTML. And this to me is a little bit bizarre, and maybe just a small diversion here as I rant about this one. But it feels like you're using and building a Boeing 747 in order to commute to work. Yeah? That's a bit of a bizarre one, but you know, you've built that plane, you've filled it with fuel, you've flown it up into the air, and somehow you've just landed it right next to your work, you know, 2 kilometers away. And that's technically amazing, you know, respect for building and piloting and flying a 747 across the sky to get to work. But, why the fuck didn't you just buy a bicycle? Seriously. It's technically amazing, but utterly impractical a lot of the time. Maybe we should be using JavaScript only when we have no other choice. You know, the whole layered thing, put the most robust things at the bottom and layer things up. And it's led to this awful situation now, where we have sites that are no longer robust. Remember that before we could reach into the guts of a site and pull things out and it still worked? Well, sites that used to be resilient like that now are falling over. 1 semicolon in the wrong place and the site collapses completely. Somebody's got a flaky network connection. Boom, the site goes over. If JavaScript is blocked for some reason, believe me, you would not, that is so unbelievably common in a lot of institutions still. Or turning off JavaScript. People do actually do that. In fact, there was a study, not recently, a couple of years ago now, by the government digital services team in London that said 1.5% of all JavaScript deliveries will fail. All the time. Think about that, like 1 in 80 attempts, maybe what's that, 1 in 80, 1 in 90 attempts will fail completely and your users will not get any JavaScript. And again, that's that network thing, that's that blocking thing, flaky 3G connection, they've just gone through a tunnel, could be anything. Makes it fragile. And it's like we've turned that pyramid of robustness upside down. And we've put the most fragile things at the bottom, taking all the weight where they're the most likely to shatter. And honestly, there's a reason why we don't build pyramids like this. It's not the most practical way of doing things. So collectively, as an industry, we've got this new focus. We started talking about tooling and packaging and build tools. Maybe it's as a response. Maybe it's because of a cause, chicken and egg, what is it? And don't get me wrong, I use these things every day. I write JavaScript. I write modular code. I'm busy learning about all the new aspects of ES6 constantly. I author NPM packages. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a Luddite with this thing, but I do take care to use them responsibly. We'll talk a bit more about that in a bit. But the culture, well, the word user has started dropping out of our vocabularies collectively. Whereas we used to talk about what makes a user happy, what is good for the user, we've started saying what is good for the developer. The word users has suddenly disappeared. And that means we're back to building sites that exclude people. We're explicitly saying to some people, you cannot come into my website, depending on your technology setup. Because we want to have our fun with technology. Take a drink of water while I'm here. But maybe this is a bit negative. Maybe there's things that we can do to sort this all out before it's too late. What can we do to stop this cycle repeating and starting again? Well, we can start by learning the basics. And not of technology, but of people. Because empathy is the most important thing that a developer can have. Our jobs, if we write any kind of front-end code, is about people. Those are the people who use, those are the things that use our systems. People, people, people. How can we do an amazing job if we don't understand them? It's all about empathy. So there's a few lessons here. Let's just do 3. But before those 3, I'm going to start with lesson 0, the fundamental. Oh my goodness, look at the exciting things I just gone there. I just hit my calorie count. Yeah, right in the middle of the talk. Lesson 0. It's about gaining empathy. That wasn't it? For goodness sake. We have this assumption that empathy is innate to some people. Some people are born with empathy, while others just don't have any. And particularly, we assume that bias is towards women, while men have no kind of empathy abilities. But this is absolute fucking bollocks. This is lies. Because empathy is a muscle. At the same time, it's a learnable skill. You can do this every day. You can do empathy as an act, and you will reinforce it, and you will get better at caring about other people. So practice it every day, every time you can. Okay, so let's go on to these lessons, like quick lessons here. So exercising this empathy, if we do this as a practice, makes us more aware that not everyone is like us. Especially not like the typical web developer. Go back to your offices and look around, on a daily basis, and you'll probably see it's a bunch of white guys in the office. Probably about 20 to 30 years old. Yeah? And there's nothing wrong with that. That just is the way our industry is right now. We're changing it, but slowly. But the world in general is so much more incredibly diverse than that. It's got so many other people and wonders in it. And it means that if you base your assumptions on your peer group and on your cohorts, you're going to make some dreadful mistakes. All right, lesson 2. Just quick lessons here, quick lessons. We are generally rich people in this industry. I know it doesn't feel like it. I know I don't feel like it when I've paid my rent and done all those kind of things. At the end of the month, I don't feel rich. But we are generally. The very fact we can entertain the idea of buying an iPhone, a new iPhone X, it is not out of our reach for, as developers. Most of the world does not think like that. They don't have this notion of just being able to buy whatever they want. Not everyone is a tech person. And not everyone is these idiots, honestly. Similarly, not everyone is well connected on the planet. In fact, most of the planet is actually on 3G connections, but we assume everybody is on broadband or on fibre, using things on a local area network at incredibly high speeds. They're not. Most of the time, like I said before, they're on the average phone with an average connection speed. And in fact, I think sometimes in the back of our heads, we imagine a poor connection to be like this. It's a little hut in Africa somewhere, and they're so poor people with the little satellite connections up to the sky, which is a fucking racist point of view anyway, because the actual truth is this. This is the shittiest internet connection you can get on the planet. Rural America. 30% of rural America is on dial-up. 56 kilobits a second connection. In the richest country in the world. Now remember the average site size we were talking about? 3 megabytes? Does anybody want to take a guess how long that would take to download on 56 kbps?
3 hours.
3 hours. It's actually slightly faster than that. It's actually 7 minutes to download an average web page. Remember that whole stereotype about, the just waiting for a JPEG to render slowly? That is a reality for so many people. And a final little empathy lesson is that not everyone is able-bodied. And you might think here, oh, that's wheelchairs. That's the obvious ones, like blindness. It's these kind of things we're talking about, these situations. But it's not. 12% of all people have a disability of some kind. 12% of people in this room have a disability. It's quite likely to be. Because disability doesn't just cover those kind of like wheelchairs or blindness situations. It covers things like colour blindness, arthritis, dyslexia, ADHD. I know I suffer from that one dreadfully. They're real things. And so don't worry if you haven't thought about this before. Don't worry if you haven't considered these aspects. Because there's no checklist on human experiences. But once you're aware about it, maybe you need to start adapting your behaviour and the ways that you deal with things. Because again, our job is to build things for people. Good catch.
Yeah.
And it is fundamentally about empathy. Okay, right, so that's the preaching over, that's the lessons over for this one. Sorry if anyone felt pontificated out. So we're all ready now. We're ready to start building with empathy. Yeah? We've thought about this and we can start building things a little bit better. So, what can we do? How can we do universal design? How can we bring accessibility into practice? What do they mean in reality? Well, a real-world example of this is this. Doorknobs. I honestly never thought when I was a child I would be up in front of people talking about doorknobs. Honestly, it's a bizarre thing. So, these doorknobs, they're both beautiful, yeah? Can we agree? They're both beautiful doorknobs. However, one of them works for everybody, while one of them excludes. Yeah? If you have arthritis, if you have an amputation, if you've got some kind of disability in some way, one of these is completely unusable. So maybe in a similar way, we should be building sites that look just as good, work just the same, cost just as much to produce, but are usable by everybody and don't exclude certain groups. Users don't see any visual difference, they don't care about this stuff, they're users, they don't know anything with it. I don't think that. And designing for this base case, by designing universally, we get so many other advantages. So for example, we design for people so that they can use it whether they have hands, whether they have arthritis, whether they have disability. But this also helps if you're carrying a baby, if you're carrying bags of shopping. In this analogy, you can still open the door, still use a doorknob. And in the same way, if we build things accessibly and universally in mind from the start, we give benefits to other people. We let them do so many other things. So, how do we start with this? How do we just start a simple approach to building things better? Well, the first thing that you can do is to discover your users' core needs and their core user journey. Because the user is trying to do something. I know it feels like they're just fucking around most of the time and messing up your Google Analytics, but they are actually trying to do something. For example, on a restaurant website, can somebody name what they think a user would try to find out on a restaurant website?
Menu.
A menu? Location?
Opening hours.
Opening hours. Perfect. Those are the three main things that anybody would look for on a restaurant site. And it's similar for every other sector of business or areas of the internet. People will always have some key core needs. So, what you can do is you can get these core journeys quickly into HTML. And I do mean just HTML. And you can see if this works with real users. I know, honestly, sounds a bit bizarre to some people, but this is actually how we do it in our company. And I'm going to show you a little bit of how that happens. HTML is the foundation of your site. It's what everything else is built on. And it is 100% universal. So, pure HTML, stripped of design, stripped of form, we see the real core form of things. And we can start thinking about where the universal cases occur, where those universal core journeys might happen. And you get a huge amount for free with HTML. An enormous amount. HTML is so generous, it's got all these things built in. Accessibility being the main one. You might see all these articles talking about, oh, you have to add ARIA roles and you have to add landmark navigation and stuff. Well, that isn't needed most of the time if you simply build with semantic HTML from the start, because it's built in. It's implicit in the language. And if you do build HTML in this way, you actually see things like, for example, screen readers would see it. You get to see the naked site. So let's look at an example. And I'm going to ask those people of a delicate disposition to cover their eyes because we are going to see some raw HTML. I gave you a fair warning. Here it is. It is horrible. It is horrible to look at. But this is what we start with in our company. We generate this from the server and we place it onto a page. I'm not talking about a prototype. I'm not talking about a test. I'm talking about this is what we start with in development. There's nothing on there. There's no CSS. There's no JavaScript. There is nothing to fail at all. This is completely universal. And you can componentize this. You can do this on the back end however you want. You might use PHP, you might use Java, Node.js, whatever. You can still componentize this and put these different elements on the screen, but just output HTML initially. But carry on for the example of how we do things. We then add an ultra basic style sheet. The most simple possible one. It's barely more than styled HTML. And this still works. This is still universal because it doesn't use any modern features. It doesn't use any positioning. Anything that could fail is not put on there. And genuinely, this is the one that we test with users. I've literally been missing out on a testing session today because I'm here, where we would have been placing this level of code in front of users and asking them, does this meet your requirements? And they give us answers about, yes, I can see the information that I need and I can click through the site. We find out those things. Oh, by the way, I should actually say this is a real thing that I worked on a few months ago. So this is live stuff out there. So now we've got working HTML. Yeah, we've got a very basic working HTML. We've got very basic working CSS. The bottom layer of that pyramid is built. Yeah, we've had the workers in. People have poured concrete. They've gone over there with the little trowels. Everything is working. Now we get to decorate them. Those real components that you built. You know, server-side includes. You put server-side includes. What am I talking about? That really is 90s. All those little server-side elements. You put them together, made them into components. Now you can make them as beautiful as they are practical. But this is where I want to pause for a second to divert us on another little path on this journey. I want to give you this quote, which is by Chris Heilman. It's not okay to block old browsers, but it is a waste of time to support them 100%. Because what I worry is that people in this room have been thinking, I'm advocating for making things work in old browsers 100%. And that is so far from the truth, it's unreal, because I'm not a masochist. I do not want to make Internet Explorer 6 work. Honestly, I would rather hammer nails into my hands onto the table. I couldn't bear it. No. And I'm lazy anyway. No, I'm lazy. I don't want to do that stuff. So what do lazy devs do? We optimize our processes. We change things. And so we find ourselves using, as Bring the Nature, something called cutting the mustard. This is a technique that the BBC came up with. How to describe it? They serve up a core website, just the same as we do. Core HTML, core CSS. Just same as Bring the Nature. And then they do a check to see what the JavaScript capabilities of the browser are. Just a few simple lines. Just this. That's all they do. And then they serve up advanced CSS and advanced JavaScript based on if this passes or not. All it's doing is checking, see, does it have a few modern requirements? If it does, boom, they send all the advanced things. And the BBC were pioneers in this. They were so excellent at doing this kind of thing. But we actually decided to do a variant of it. Because the BBC based their support on features, JavaScript features. Whereas we actually do things a little differently because we have scientists in the mix. And if you've ever dealt with scientists, you know they are the most complaining bunch of people ever. I say that with all my heart, with love, because my partner is actually a scientist, a neuroscientist. But I still acknowledge they complain about things, especially when you change things. So we keep a stable list of browsers that we support. We support grade A browsers, which are completely opposed to grade C browsers. Grade A, 100% support. Grade C, 0. Everything in between that, we give the advanced stuff to, but we maybe don't check to see if that works, because frankly we cannot check 5 billion different browser, OS, network, screen size, network condition combinations that actually exist for that. Even a large organization. We have to agree these kind of changes months ahead of what we support. But let's show you this in practice, because this is a little bit abstract. I'll show you what this means in practice. This is how we do it. We serve up a specially crafted media query. And this actually matches all of the browsers that we support. All of those grade A browsers. And Internet Explorer 11, because we can't quite get the scientists to agree to give up that one just yet. We then send those browsers that pass this media query an advanced, upgraded style sheet. And that's what it ends up looking like. That's gone from that raw HTML to looking, it's okay now, it's kind of getting on for pretty, that's good. This is our advanced CSS. So fantastic, we have that advanced CSS, we have that core style sheet going. Now we can add those fancy things that we talked about. We can add the JavaScript, and we can upgrade the forms so they communicate via REST APIs. We can do AJAX for the page navigation, whatever you want to do, whatever fancy techniques you want to use. So here's how we serve the JavaScript. That took a while. This is how we serve the fancy JavaScript. We actually do a check via match media, one of those really underutilized parts of JavaScript. We feed in that media query that we did. We go to locate it on the page, feed that into match media, and if that media query passes, then we load all of our JavaScript based upon that. I mean, we don't want that fancy JavaScript to load if the CSS doesn't. That would just be some kind of weird cat-grass nightmare for the user at that point. And then we can add lots of things. Then we can do all of our interactive tabs and animations. We can convert links to drop-downs, all kinds of different things. And you can see here, that is a completely different site from that raw HTML we showed earlier. That's fully interactive, that has advanced dynamic aspects to it. And we'll talk about more of those in a little bit. And I'll also send you a link. I don't think we've got it on there, but I'll send you a link to our playbook. We actually maintain a public playbook of all these techniques and of how we do these things. So you can go and browse it and look around at your leisure. But in short, probably just Google Springer Nature Frontend Playbook and you'll find it. That's the easy way. I'll tweet it later on. Is that good or is that bad? That's a good noise. Okay.
No.
I'm just tensing just in case I have to dive out of a window or something. Right, okay. Is that what fire engines sound like here? Is that ambulances? Fire engines? Something. That's a something. Right, okay. Something far away. Good, I like that. That makes me happy. Right. Anyway, let's go back to this. So this is practical progressive enhancement. That's a very practical example of how to do things. How to make a site universal from the start so that it works for everybody. Then enhancing it as it becomes necessary. Works for everybody and it's robust as hell. It's also the ultimate in agile development. You don't design something in this way. I wish that was me. It's not me. We don't design something using this technique. We actually never make sketch files or PSDs. We allow the site to evolve naturally. What we do the HTML, then we add in the CSS, and we gradually iterate. We test with our users on very rapid cycles. Several times a week, at least once a sprint, and we get that feedback and we incorporate that into the next sprint over and over and over, and we have products that just dynamically evolve over the course of a few months. Yes, they follow our brand guidelines, but how they move, how they act is completely evolutionary. It's the ultimate in lean UX. It's also completely labor saving for lazy people, because again, I am so lazy. I love being lazy, and this is a lazy technique because you don't have to add on more than is necessary. It's okay, the siren's gone, it's fine, you don't have to jump out, it's fine. You don't have to start out trying the latest techniques. You build upwards and only add what is strictly necessary. It's extremely lean and economical. And it fights that FOMO feeling. You know, does anyone know what FOMO is? Fear of missing out. Yeah, we have that like mad in this industry. Constantly afraid that we haven't learned and done the latest things. And that attitude can fuck off. Seriously, I'm so not happy with that attitude. We've got to ask, does this help our users? Instead of just getting excited by the latest technology and implementing it for our CVs. Does this help the user? That should be the fundamental question every time. And this kind of technique is a deliberate break on that kind of excitement. Because we do build far too complex most of the time. And we try to keep up with the big industries, the big players, forgetting that they have 10,000 engineers on call to do whatever they want, while we are typically a few people in a room crying and desperately trying to keep up with these Silicon Valley trendsetters. Keep it simple.
Stupid.
I was going to say silly, but you know, that's fine. But you might say, oh, well, this can't cope with modern things, doing things in this way. You know, you can't use the latest techniques. Well, sure you can. You absolutely can keep up with things. The biggest, wow. Okay, that's good. That's good, I like this. For the benefit of the camera, pizza has just arrived. So, this kind of thing can cope with the most advanced stuff. For example, state management is one that you might think about here. That's the traditional thing that's used as an example of why we need to do hyper-advanced JavaScript. Well, this technique copes with it just fine. Every day at our office, we make use of Redux, for example, in amongst all the advanced JavaScript that we load. And we do things that way. Redux works just fine with vanilla JavaScript. We don't have to use React. And in fact, that is probably the red line for us. That's the one thing that we don't do. Client-side React. Or client-side rendering of any kind. Because that is again, that ultimate thing, the pyramid turned upside down. So We avoid that completely. And it excels. It excels in being robust, universal. It works when JavaScript is broken or blocked. Believe me, that is very, very common in scientific circles, in universities and laboratories. I was afraid that was I was getting the fear there. I thought I heard that sound. I thought it was the fire engine again. It works when poor networks are in play. When people have blocked things, it always works. And it is completely people first. But even if you don't do progressive enhancement for some reason, wherever, I know, there's a lot of cultural change to do that kind of thing. There are still a lot of other things that you can do. And let's go through a few of these quickly, because otherwise I fear people will lurch towards the pizza before I finished speaking. So, let's have a few run-throughs of those. In your dev tools, right now, well not right now, when you get back to your offices and in front of your laptops, turn on 3G in the dev tools and keep it on. And use your site like that every day. And you will honestly come to realize how frustrating it is to use 3D and be serving large assets to those kind of sites. Not everyone is on the wide connection. Not everyone is on a local area network. Similarly, try testing on real hardware. That €3,000 Mac that you've got, I don't know what it would be in the currency here. The €3,000 Mac is infinitely more powerful than anything most users would use. In the same way, the iPhone X is hundreds of times more powerful than the next most powerful phone. And yet we test on that, we develop on those, assuming that's the norm. Get hold of some of those middle-of-the-range phones, those average phones, the Moto G4, go check it out. And if you do it in the opposite way, if you develop for the least powerful first, and make your site hyper-optimized on that, your site is going to be so fucking fast on something powerful. It'll be incredible difference. If you get the chance, turn on your screen reader. I believe that there's just a shortcut on a Mac, Command and F5. Press that one, you'll turn on screen reader support straight away. And start navigating your site by sound. The first time I did this, I felt so ridiculously embarrassed. It was unreal. I felt like an idiot. I didn't know the key combinations, I couldn't do anything, but within an hour, I had everything learned and everything working, and I could use screen reader just fine. So many people use browsers in this way. Not even like blind people, you think that's the case. Oh, it's blind people, they just use screen readers. I know so many people who use them just to read out pages as they are working or cooking, reading out recipes to themselves. It's a valid way of using a browser. And if we can learn DOM APIs by heart, if we can learn all these different JavaScript APIs, we can fucking well learn a few key combos and do this, honestly. And similarly, try using a keyboard only to navigate your website. Just throw out the mouse for a day and just do that. Half the room is probably using Vim or Emacs or something like that anyway, so you're already keyboard focused. But just try tabbing instead, just one thing, tab, 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 and see how your site works. Because again, so many people use sites like that every single day. They don't interact with a mouse pointer. Be amazed how much better things can be done. And when I talk about this, I normally hear this as the most popular refrain, which is, these aren't my users anyway, you know? I don't have users like that. I don't have poor users. I don't have disabled users. Everybody who uses my website has a good internet connection. I make sure of that. And the truth is, those actually are your users. Yes, they are, because you cannot know a user's situation ever. You can't just assume they're using things in the best possible conditions. They might be on a borrowed device, using somebody else's. They might be on a work computer. They could have become temporarily disabled or permanently disabled. Even millionaires have bad days, you know? It must be so hard for them, for the millionaires. Anyway, we're coming to the end here. So, let's just go over things in summary. What have we learned? We should build universal, robust websites. We should always assume the stress case, not the edge case. The edge case implies it's something that we don't really care about. Let's talk about the stress cases for people, those hard situations. And let's build for people, not for trends. Because the web's success is built upon it being robust. That robustness has made it work for everybody. And people now depend on the web. It's an actual lifeline for hundreds of millions of people around the planet now. And that means we have to defend it for everybody. And we have to keep that beauty and that weirdness. The beauty comes from diversity. A diversity of people and a diversity of technology. We only enable that diversity. So let's not make it about us, and let's make it about the wonderful weirdness of the weird, wild web. Thank you. I don't know what we do now. I could stand up here, I could do a juggling act, except I can't juggle. You could dance. You can ask a few questions. You can ask one question, then we'll have lots of other people. Let's make it. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
What is about polyfields and trying to deliver the same experience for all the users versus delivering a different experience, a degraded experience for some users?
So that's a choice you have to make about what level of browser you're supporting.
What was your opinion?
Polyfills are great. We actually make use of polyfill.io for some of our browsers. It lets us use a lot more modern JavaScript, and then those browsers that don't have complete support, it can be polyfilled automatically. That's fine.
And a quick another question about desire paths.
About what?
Desire paths. Desire paths.
Desire paths?
Like cow paths. You know, when people walk in the park and they don't follow the normal...
Oh, yeah, the cow paths. Yeah.
And there was this guy who talked on another conference about like CSS grid and why we should start using it, even if not all the browsers support it correctly or implement like Internet Explorer or something like that. Mm-hmm. And like using technologies that are not supported well is like pushing the industry forward and improving the adoption rate. And what do you think about that?
It can be a case like that, but if you try telling that to somebody who's locked onto an older browser and they cannot upgrade and that you should really be using the most modern browser, but they can't for some reason, then how does it work for them, you know? But if you design in certain ways that your site still works, even if they don't have access to all these technologies, then there's no reason why not to push ahead. Just try and make sure it works for everybody. Any other questions? I won't swear at anybody, I swear. Honestly. No, that's good. Right, great, fantastic. Pizza. Go on, go.